Reality is not a fixed structure you move through. It's a living field responding to your presence. Every thought you hold, every emotion you emit, sends a signal into this field, shaping what returns to you. The Quantum Enlivenment Code. Introduction. The world you see is not separate from you. It is synchronized with the frequency you embody. This matrix isn't built from matter alone. It's formed from intention, attention, and resonance. The patterns around you are not coincidences, but reflections. Encoded responses to your internal state. And the code behind it all isn't hidden. It's humming within your awareness, waiting to be felt, not figured out. This audiobook isn't about learning something new. It's about remembering what has always been active beneath the noise. As you listen, you're not collecting information. You're attuning to a deeper rhythm, one that aligns thought, energy, and outcome as one seamless movement. With each word, you'll feel the matrix soften, revealing that it was never separate. It was always alive with you. This is the Quantum Enlivenment Code. Not a formula to control reality, but an invitation to become fully conscious within it. As you move through these transmissions, you'll begin to sense the architecture of existence shifting in real time. Not because reality is changing, but because you are. There's no turning back from alignment. Once the code activates, your life stops being a reaction and becomes a conscious creation. Are you ready to tune into the living matrix and activate the code within you? If so, type "I am ready" in the comments and step fully into conscious alignment. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Library of Wisdom for more transmissions that awaken the architect within. Chapter 1. The Breath Print of Reality. The act of breathing is far more than a biological function. It is a dialogue, quiet, invisible, and constant, between your internal state and the field of reality surrounding you. With each inhale, the body does not merely take in oxygen, it draws in raw potential. This potential is not empty. It is alive and highly sensitive to the frequency of your internal world. When you breathe in, the field receives a subtle signal, a kind of readiness to shape itself around the unconscious blueprint you're holding inside. If your inner world is calm or conflicted, focused or scattered, it doesn't matter whether you are aware of it or not. The breath transmits that state faithfully. You are imprinting a signature into the field with every inhale, encoding the moment with a message shaped by who you are being in that breath. This breath print, once drawn in, sets the stage for the exhale. Unlike the inhale, the exhale is not passive. It is an active signal, like a command sent to the matrix of reality. As air leaves the body, it carries an invisible structure of information outward, broadcasting a vibrational statement that informs the surrounding energy field. The exhale is the point of transmission. It delivers the instructions that the inhale gathered from your inner world. These instructions are not formed in words, yet they are precise. They are constructed from emotional tone, mental focus, tension, and subtle energetic resonance. Reality receives this broadcast not as a request, but as a directive. It listens to your exhale as a signal of what should respond, shape, or shift. What makes this system more intricate is how sensitive the field is to rhythm. The breath's pace, depth, and pattern all play a role in this communication. The rhythm you breathe in doesn't just affect your body, it influences nearby energetic formations. Even the slightest variation, like a pause between breaths, a shallow intake, or a sudden exhale, sends a different signal. These micro-rhythms ripple outward, altering how your surroundings behave in real time. Imagine an artist brushing light across a canvas, where the timing of each stroke changes the entire texture. In the same way, your breathing rhythm writes on the space around you. It doesn't matter if you mean to do it or not. The matrix is reactive, and breath is its preferred language. At a deeper layer, specific breath patterns can act like keys to hidden doors, without needing to pair your breath with a thought or belief. Certain natural breath sequences already contain coded information that interacts with quantum systems. These breath patterns, often unique to each person or moment, can unlock access points in the field. These are not grand or mystical openings, but subtle shifts in perception, time, or energy flow that would not occur without that specific breath print. The key here is not about effort or practice. The field doesn't require you to try. It responds to the breath as it is when it is aligned with a certain natural signature. When that match occurs, the breath becomes a silent passcode, one that gently slips open a part of reality that was previously closed. Even after breath has left the body, it leaves a residue, a kind of energetic fingerprint that lingers. This isn't something you can see or detect with the five senses, but the space you are in holds onto it. The room, the objects, even the air itself subtly holds the imprint of what your breath carried. It's like leaving behind an echo, but instead of sound, it's a vibrational texture. This lingering breath print can influence what unfolds in that space long after you've left it. It interacts with future events, people, and possibilities, weaving itself into the environment's fabric. It may influence the mood of the next person who enters the room, or cause a shift in how events occur later in the day. The imprint does not vanish when the breath ends. It continues writing in the background, as if your breath had left behind instructions for the space to follow. This entire exchange, inhale, exhale, rhythm, unlocking, and residue, happens continuously, quietly, and powerfully. There is no need for mental intention, control, or even awareness of it for it to occur. You are constantly in communication with the quantum field, simply by existing and breathing. Your breath becomes your personal scriptwriter, composing a reality around you based on what it silently carries in and sends out. The matrix listens. It responds not to what you think, say, or wish, but to what your breath encodes. And it encodes everything: your fears, desires, clarity, confusion, alignment, or disconnection. The breath does not lie or hide. It delivers exactly what is present in you at that moment. Understanding breath in this way changes how we see ourselves in relation to the world. You are not breathing into emptiness. You are breathing into a conscious system that watches, responds, and shapes itself according to what your breath declares. You are the transmitter, and reality is the listener. Yet it listens in breath, not in words. The more precise your inner state, the more refined your breath print. And the more refined the breath print, the more accurate and immediate the reality that takes shape around you. You become not just the receiver of life, but its coder, issuing moment-by-moment instructions through the unseen flow of breath. There is an intimacy here, a quiet, sacred closeness between your breath and the living matrix. It's as if the field waits for your next breath to decide what form it will take. Each inhale is a preparation. Each exhale is an instruction. The rhythm carries the tone. The structure opens the door, and the leftover trace leaves instructions for what comes next. You may walk through your day unaware of this, but the breath print continues, coding space, shaping time, and speaking to the invisible architecture that listens only to breath. Chapter 2, Frequency, Gating and dimensional positioning reality isn't a flat, fixed landscape. It's layered like sheets of sound or transparent films stacked over one another. Each of these layers holds a different version of life, a different tone, a different level of clarity, a different rhythm of experience. What determines which layer you're standing in isn't chance or effort. It's frequency. Frequency isn't about sound or science in this context. It's the invisible pulse of your inner state. It's the constant signal your entire being emits, even when you're silent. That frequency determines exactly where you land in the matrix of reality, not metaphorically, but spatially. It locks you into a layer, into one of those stacked films, and holds you there until your frequency shifts. The moment-by-moment emotional tone that lives inside you acts like a stabilizer. If your inner world vibrates at a particular level, your outer experience reflects that level, not by favor or punishment, but by match. This stabilizing force isn't just about what you feel. It's about the consistency of what you feel. If you're floating between different inner states, the system senses that instability and doesn't open higher gates. But when your emotional frequency becomes consistent, even if it's not positive by common standards, it creates a stable position. That stability holds you within a certain layer of reality, locking in access to experiences, people, opportunities, and environments that match that exact frequency band. Think of your emotions as the stabilizing legs of a table. They anchor the structure you're standing on, keeping you locked into one level of the quantum building. Each layer of reality is guarded by a natural protocol. It doesn't allow just anyone through. It doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to your sustained signal. That's what opens or closes the gates. These are not literal gates, but access codes woven into the structure of reality. They remain inactive unless your frequency matches the required code long enough to signal consistency. A brief change in state, even if it's a higher frequency, won't override the default. Reality waits to see if you'll hold it. Only then does the lock shift, and the gate to a different dimensional layer opens. These access points are always available, but not always visible. They remain sealed until your frequency pattern stabilizes to the level that resonates with what lies behind them. When your frequency doesn't match the layer you're attempting to live in, things begin to slip. This is called drift. Drift happens when your inner state is misaligned with the layer you're trying to hold. For example, if you once stabilized at a higher frequency, but now carry lingering emotional patterns that belong to a previous state, the field starts to reject your position. You feel the friction. Small glitches appear. Things that once flowed now stall. This isn't punishment. It's gravity, pulling you back into the layer that matches your current state. You drift toward older versions of your experience because you're still carrying their signal. The dimensional current adjusts to your broadcast, not your memory. Holding on to outdated emotional frequencies causes a delay in the new layer fully forming. It can't anchor because you haven't let go of what belongs below it. There is, however, a rare event where this gating process can be overridden. It happens when a moment of pure inner alignment occurs. This is not the result of trying or forcing, but of something clicking into place inside. When this inner alignment is sudden and full, when your body, emotions, thoughts, and energy synchronize into coherence, the system responds immediately. The gate opens without resistance. The field doesn't hesitate. It's as if reality recognizes that something in you has become whole enough to handle the next layer without trial. This kind of access is not achieved through steps or time. It happens in an instant, like an elevator skipping floors. Reality shifts so fast in that moment that you may feel disoriented because you've jumped into a new dimensional structure before the body or mind even catches up. These sudden upgrades are rare, but they happen when the field senses full coherence inside you. But rising in frequency doesn't always lead to smooth access. If your frequency rises while your identity remains anchored in the lower levels, a strange friction forms. This is not because something went wrong, but because you are still carrying heavy identity markers. Ideas about who you are, what you must protect, or what defines your worth. These identity anchors don't match the new level you've entered. They create lag. It's like trying to float while holding a stone. The energy rises, but the identity pulls back. This creates resistance in the field, a distortion in the access layer. The higher dimensional space tries to shape around you, but your anchored identity distorts the pattern. It's like broadcasting two different frequencies at once, and the system doesn't know which one to respond to. The result is static, slowed outcomes, and scattered pathways. This lag doesn't mean you're blocked. It means part of you is still positioned in a dimension you've already grown beyond, and that weight needs to resolve itself. Until then, you may feel flashes of expansion, followed by contraction. This is not emotional up and down. It is dimensional conflict. Your current energetic broadcast is being pulled in two directions because your frequency has shifted, but your sense of self has not followed. This tension keeps the higher access partially open but unstable. It's not the field punishing you, it's simply the mechanics of resonance. All of these dynamics, stabilization, gating, drift, sudden coherence, and identity lag, operate in real time. You don't need to try to interact with them. They are already interacting with you. Reality is structured to match, respond, and adjust based on your broadcasted frequency, not your hopes or decisions. These dimensional layers exist like environments in a living system, and you are continuously entering and exiting them based on the frequency you emit and sustain. Frequency isn't a mood, and it isn't a feeling. It is a position in the architecture of space itself. Each moment you emit a signature, and the field reads it with perfect accuracy. You can't cheat it, and you don't need to earn it. You simply land where you match. This is not about moving through time, jumping timelines, or finding portals. That belongs to other concepts. What is at work here is the raw spatial positioning that happens through sustained frequency. It is mechanical, yet deeply personal. The world is layered, and you are always somewhere in that stack. The layers respond to your frequency like doors that only open when the right sound is played, and that sound is you humming at a certain rate. As that rate changes, your position changes. Nothing needs to be forced. The field already knows how to position you. You are placed by what you are broadcasting. Chapter 3. The Conscious Echo Mechanism. Reality has a way of repeating itself, but not by mistake. What seems like coincidence, fate, or bad luck is often a carefully mirrored echo of something that hasn't been seen within. These aren't random events happening to you. They're structured patterns sent back to you. The external world behaves like a speaker that replays the signals you don't fully process inside yourself. But unlike a speaker that just plays sound, this one uses situations, people, and even silence to bounce your unprocessed emotions back to you. These are called conscious echoes, not because they are conscious at first, but because they are waiting to become conscious. When something deeply felt inside remains unacknowledged, an old sadness, a buried resentment, a silent fear, it doesn't just disappear. It sinks beneath the surface and becomes part of your vibrational field. But the field you live in, the one that shapes your experiences, is intelligent. It doesn't allow unresolved energies to sit still. Instead, it brings them to the surface by creating repeating experiences around you. These loops don't happen out of cruelty. They are precision reflections. If an emotion has been left unwitnessed, meaning you didn't fully feel it, understand it, or even notice it, it begins to show up around you in symbolic form. A betrayal repeats, not because you deserve it, but because something in you never fully met the last one. An opportunity disappears again, not as punishment, but because your fear of loss still shapes your edge. The world keeps echoing what hasn't been seen, but this echo doesn't always return instantly. That would be too obvious. The quantum field has its own timing. Often, it creates what's known as delay encoding. This is when an event, conversation, or feeling is replayed days, weeks, or even years after the original emotional imprint. The delay is intentional. It creates a gap between cause and effect, so you don't immediately connect the dots. Without that immediate connection, your logical mind dismisses the repetition as unrelated. That dismissal keeps the loop alive. The delay tricks the conscious mind, but not to hurt you, only to ensure you don't interfere too early. The system wants you to truly see the pattern, not just think you've identified it. So it places the reflection far enough from the original emotion that only deeper awareness, not surface memory, will catch it. These echoes don't always come back through obvious channels. Most people expect feedback to arrive in the form of words, events, or direct confrontation. But many times, the feedback loop operates in invisible ways. This is where the unseen feedback receptors come in. These are subtle sensory openings, like energetic antennas, that absorb information around you without you knowing. You may overhear someone else's story that sounds strangely similar to yours. You may walk into a room and feel a tension that matches a feeling you've ignored for weeks. These are not accidents. They're soft echoes, whispers from the field meant to be felt more than understood. You absorb these echoes through body sensations, sudden mood shifts, or quiet discomforts that seem to come from nowhere. But they are reflections, your own emotional patterns, speaking back to you through the world's fabric. There comes a moment in every loop where something cracks. You may be in the middle of a familiar argument, a repeating failure, or a cycle you swore you left behind, and then without planning it, you see it, not with your eyes, but with your consciousness. That moment is called the conscious collapse point. It's the instant when the loop loses its grip. The situation may still be unfolding, but your awareness suddenly pierces through the pattern. You don't just notice it, you recognize it. You see its root. You feel its shape. And that seeing, that total awareness, becomes the force that dissolves it. The field no longer needs to echo that specific energy, because you finally received it fully. You heard the message behind the repetition. That moment of recognition collapses the loop, not by force, but by absorption. It's like draining a charge from a circuit. It stops sparking. However, even after such a breakthrough, some remnants remain. These are the residual loop fragments. They're the leftover pieces of a pattern that once held power. Though the main structure has collapsed, these fragments can still echo through your life. They often disguise themselves as new decisions or fresh starts, but they carry a subtle trace of the old energy. You may think you've made a different choice, but the feeling underneath may still carry an echo of what you just outgrew. These fragments aren't dangerous. They're just small frequencies trying to find their way out. But they can confuse you, especially if you expect immediate perfection after a major realization. The field is still adjusting, cleaning, and recalibrating. These residual echoes ask for continued presence, not panic. They aren't the full loop returning. They're just fading signals that need to be witnessed one last time. The entire echo mechanism is deeply personal. It doesn't respond to what you believe, say, or intend. It responds to what you haven't fully felt. The quantum field reflects not your surface thoughts, but the energies buried under them. Each repeating experience, no matter how frustrating or strange, is a kind of invitation, an invitation to see what has been skipped, avoided, or misread within. Once you truly meet it, the need for repetition dissolves. But until then, the loop continues, not as punishment, but as precision feedback. Noticing the pattern is not enough. Feeling it completely in its raw and unedited form is what unlocks the release. There is no need to search for the loop or chase it down. If something is still active within you, the field will bring it to you always. It has never failed to do this. Every unprocessed emotional imprint has a gravity to it. That gravity pulls in mirrored situations that feel different on the outside, but are identical in their deeper tone. This is not philosophy. It is structure. It is how the living matrix ensures that nothing within you goes unseen. It repeats not to annoy you, but to free you. But nothing in this process involves breathing techniques, inner stillness, or frequency shifts. Those are entirely separate dynamics. Here, we are dealing only with repetition, with loops, with emotional reflection through life events. The breath is not involved. Neither is any syntax, vibration, or layer of frequency. This is not a matter of layers. It is a matter of echoes. And the more invisible the original emotion, the louder its echo becomes. Until one day you turn toward it, fully aware, and in that moment, the pattern breaks. Chapter 4. The Syntax of the Field. The universe does not wait for you to speak out loud. It reads the language you use inside. Every thought, especially the ones you repeat often and barely notice, holds a specific structure. That structure isn't just abstract, it is energetic. The inner language you use has a real shape in the quantum field. It's not the words themselves that have power, but how they are arranged, how they carry emotion, intention, and rhythm beneath the surface. This arrangement is like a kind of grammar. Just as grammar in spoken language organizes meaning for communication, the quantum field reads the energetic grammar of your internal dialogue to determine how to respond. You may think your thoughts are private, but they aren't hidden from the structure of reality. They act as ongoing instructions. Whether you're aware or not, every internal sentence has a pattern, and these patterns create a readable format for the universe to engage with. It's not the volume or clarity of your thoughts that matter. It's their internal syntax. That means the shape of how a thought is built. For example, a thought like, "I never get what I want," carries a particular energetic sequence. It includes lack, denial, and permanence. These aren't just ideas. They are structured signals, which the field responds to as if you had submitted a command. And these commands keep running, even if you forget you've said them inside. But internal language is not just logical, it's emotional. Every thought you have is infused with a tone, and that tone behaves like an adverb. It tells the field how to interpret the sentence. A neutral thought will carry a softer vibration than a thought filled with fear, anger, or doubt. These are called emotional adverbs because they modify the vibration of the thought, even if the words stay the same. If you think, "This is going to work," but you feel anxious while thinking it, the field receives a signal that contains both the hope and the tension. It doesn't filter the message to keep only the positive. It takes everything, the structure of the sentence, the feeling behind it, and even the subtle pauses or repetitions, and forms a full vibrational package. That package moves outward, carrying your emotional signature into the quantum environment. What's most important is that this language doesn't need to be spoken. In fact, the majority of what the field receives from you comes from silent thought. This is called silent linguistic load. It means the unspoken patterns you carry are still active and functional. You might think something for a split second and move on, but that moment can still leave an imprint. Your inner world is constantly broadcasting language, not in words, but in structure. Each inner phrase, whether repeated or casual, enters a kind of vibrational syntax that informs what comes next. So, while spoken language is only a tiny portion of what you express, it is your unspoken syntax that plays the most consistent role in shaping experience. Now, because many thoughts are repeated often, they begin to form something stronger. Anchors. These anchors are formed through what's known as the language lock phenomenon. When you say something to yourself over and over, especially with strong emotion, it becomes locked into the fabric of your reality. These locked phrases don't just influence single moments. They act like ongoing instructions that keep pulling similar experiences toward you. For example, someone who constantly thinks, "I'm always behind," may start noticing more situations where they run late, miss opportunities, or feel stuck. It isn't superstition, it's structural. The field doesn't judge whether the phrase is helpful or harmful. It simply recognizes that the syntax is consistent, emotionally loaded, and active. So it continues to respond to it. What makes this powerful is the fact that internal language isn't permanent. It can shift in real time. When a person interrupts their usual inner speech mid-thought, they open a doorway to what's called the syntax rewiring effect. This is the moment when the thought doesn't finish the way it usually does. Instead of completing a familiar negative phrase, the pattern breaks and a new one begins. This change, even if subtle, has an instant effect on the vibrational structure. Because the field is always listening, it immediately recalculates the output based on this new shape. But again, it's not just the words. It's the arrangement, the tone, and the way the thought shifts direction. That shift is like sending a new signal before the old one can fully settle into place. In that space of change, a new path becomes possible. This entire mechanism happens beneath the level of surface awareness for most people. You don't need to analyze every thought you have, but understanding that they form a living syntax helps you realize just how much influence they carry. Every time you think something inside, you're not just reflecting your current state. You're actively building the next layer of your experience. You're writing into the fabric of the field, and that writing isn't passive. It shapes the architecture of what's to come. Importantly, this process is not about external language. It has nothing to do with what you say to others or how you communicate out loud. The field does not require sound. It does not respond to affirmations, mantras, or verbal repetition. Those are entirely different topics that serve other purposes. What we're speaking of here is the internal language that happens quietly, consistently, and often without awareness. This is not a matter of echo, breath, stillness, or frequency. This segment deals with syntax only, the internal structure and emotional layering of thought. It is not necessary to clear your mind or try to silence your thoughts. That would belong to a completely different mechanism. Here, the focus is solely on recognizing that your internal language is active, whether you intend it to be or not. It is always running, and the way it runs, how it's shaped, where it loops, what emotional tones it carries, becomes the blueprint for how the field constructs your next experiences. Not because the universe is listening like a person, but because the field is built to respond to structured vibration. And inner language, more than anything else, is a generator of that structure. Even thoughts you don't believe still leave a trail. If you think something sarcastically, or out of habit, but carry emotion with it, the field still registers the tone. It doesn't filter based on your conscious approval. It only reads the raw output. This is why becoming aware of your internal syntax matters. Not to control it, but to understand it. To notice that your reality may be following script you didn't realize you were still running. And yet, none of this involves chanting, external speech, or spiritual voice activation. Those are separate from this segment entirely. This is the domain of thought structure and how it is constantly writing commands into the space around you. Once you understand that, you don't need to force anything. The field is already reading. Every internal sentence you shape is already a vibration traveling outward, and what returns is always shaped by the way that syntax was built. Chapter 5. The Architect's Collapse Zone. There is a hidden power in falling apart, but only when you choose the fall. The field does not fear collapse. It understands it. Collapse, when done consciously, is not an end. It is a command, a signal that you are ready to change the very structure that your life has been built upon. Intentional destruction is not chaos for the sake of chaos. It is design. You are not breaking things randomly. You are choosing to dismantle old frameworks that no longer hold truth. And when the field receives that signal, it does not resist. It listens. It responds by erasing the blueprint that was holding you in place and begins preparing the space for something entirely new. Collapse is not the same as failure. Collapse is a message. When you allow parts of yourself to fall, not from pain or despair, but from clarity, the universe recognizes this as an update. It stops reinforcing the patterns that no longer match your chosen vibration. This collapse is not accidental. It is deliberate. You become the architect of your own demolition. And in this demolition, the pieces don't vanish. They shift. They dissolve into something else, something formless, but ready to become form again. This is where the deeper power hides, not in holding things together, but in knowing when to let them fall. Often, we carry layers of ourselves that were never real to begin with. These are identities we constructed, roles we believed we had to play. The successful version, the strong one, the spiritual one, the one who always knows. These synthetic identities are like masks made of energy. They take effort to maintain. They accumulate pressure. And they block the raw field from flowing freely through you. But when you begin to shed these layers, not by escaping them, but by naming them and letting them burn, something heavy is released. A kind of density stored inside these false images begins to dissolve. That weight doesn't disappear into nothing. It becomes fuel. What you release becomes material. The field can use in new ways. This shedding is not passive. It requires inner truth. You must see the mask to remove it. And the moment you do, the structure behind it begins to break. This is the controlled implosion. It's not messy. It's intentional. You are not falling apart in fear. You are unraveling in wisdom. The limited forms you once believed where you begin to lose their shape. And as they lose shape, your deeper designs, long hidden, start to become visible. These hidden designs have always been there. But the old constructs were too dense. They block the light, block the access. When you tear them down, a kind of ancient memory inside you flickers back to life. This is not about fixing. This is about clearing. Controlled implosion means you understand that some parts of you must collapse in order for the next version to rise. You are not asking for permission from the outside world. You are not waiting for things to fall on their own. You are pulling the inner structure down with your own hands in full awareness. And in this collapse, you activate blueprints you didn't even know existed. Blueprints encoded in the layers beneath the surface. These are not blueprints for a better version of the old you. They are something entirely different. They carry new logic, new vibration, new potential. But they only activate when the old frame is cleared. In the ruins of your own structure, something strange happens. You begin to see the dark field. This is not darkness as fear. It is the raw, fertile void left behind by collapse. It is empty space, but it is not absence. It is potential. The debris from what was destroyed is still present, but no longer fixed in form. It becomes quantum material, loose and flexible. The field does not waste anything. Even what breaks down becomes part of what is rebuilt. But the difference is, now it is no longer shaped by unconscious repetition. Now it is free to follow a new design. This is what the dark field gives you. Materials no longer bound to the past. The moment right after collapse can feel strange. You are no longer the old version, but you are not yet the new. You exist in between structures. This is called the blueprint flicker phase. It's like watching glimpses of a future self flash in and out of awareness. These glimpses are not dreams or fantasies. They are previews. The field is testing forms, trying out patterns. You see a version of yourself show up in thought, in feeling, in brief external experiences, and then it fades. It comes again, a little clearer, a little more real, but it doesn't fully stabilize yet because the collapse is still completing. The old structure's energy hasn't fully cleared, and the new one is still forming its foundation. In this flicker phase, your identity is soft clay. You are not defined yet. You are fluid. The universe is watching your vibration to see what stabilizes. These early flashes of your emerging self are like sketches before the sculpture is carved. The more the old structure crumbles, the more vivid these sketches become. And as they become more consistent, they begin to take hold. But the field will not stabilize a new version of you until it is sure the old one is gone. That's why flickering happens first. It is a test pattern, not a full design. This entire process is sacred, but it's not about being calm or positive. It is raw. It is real. It is architectural destruction done with full awareness. And that awareness sends signals stronger than any wish or desire. Collapse is not something to survive. It is something to use, to call upon, to welcome not out of pain, but out of clarity that something must end for something else to begin. The structure must fall before the form can change. It's not about release for emotional peace. It's about dismantling what never truly belonged. And when that dismantling happens, intentionally, the field receives a precise message. This form is no longer needed. Prepare for the next. That message reshapes what reality delivers to you next. Not just on the outside, but at the very root of what is possible. The quantum field will never rebuild what you intentionally break unless you cling to its remains. If you let the dust settle without fear, the next version of you will rise, not as a repair of the past, but as something new you've never seen before. Chapter 6. The Sentient Stillness Layer. Stillness is often misunderstood. People assume it means emptiness, silence, or calm. But true stillness is not the absence of energy. It is the concentration of it. In this space, everything becomes sharper, not quieter. Stillness, in its most potent form, is a direct state of communication between you and the living matrix of reality. It is not passive. It is charged. And the moment you enter it, the entire field begins to notice. This kind of stillness isn't about slowing down thoughts or finding comfort. It's a state where all internal motion, mental, emotional, and energetic, pauses, and a deep, still force takes its place. In that moment, you're no longer broadcasting confusion or searching for answers. Instead, you become a receiver, a clear channel. The field, which is always active and aware, senses this change and responds, but it doesn't respond with sound or symbols. It responds with direct transmission, not words, not signs. It delivers something raw, information without explanation, knowing without thinking. When you touch this motionless state, the field gives you something you cannot find through analysis. You don't decode, you absorb. The downloads that come in are not structured like language. They enter as complete packets of understanding. You may not even be able to describe them at first, but they land deeply. They reshape how you see, how you sense, how you move, and they come without request because stillness itself becomes the signal. In stillness, asking stops, but receiving begins. This is because the field is not random. It is alive. It watches. It listens. And when your inner space becomes absolutely still, your presence lights up in a way that draws its attention. Think of it like a satellite dish, suddenly locking perfectly into a signal. The stiller you become, the more accurately that signal comes in. Movement, whether physical or mental, distorts the connection. Stillness removes distortion. In that space, the signal arrives clean and unfiltered. But this stillness isn't empty. In fact, it is more active than most kinds of energy. While nothing seems to be happening, everything is shifting behind the scenes. Stillness creates a field around you that becomes dense with potential. This is the active, quiet field. The moment you enter it, even without thought or intention, the quantum field around you becomes alert. It watches your state like a living intelligence. And as long as you stay in that stillness, the field begins recalibrating. It doesn't wait for your instructions. It reads your energetic alignment and begins shifting external conditions to match the quality of stillness you're holding. The stillness itself becomes the message. And this message is more powerful than any action or decision. It is precise. It doesn't demand. It doesn't push. It simply exists as a frequency so clear, so undisturbed, that the living matrix recognizes it as a primary directive. In this state, your outer reality doesn't need to be managed or manipulated. It begins to organize itself around you. This isn't magic. It's natural. The field is always scanning for coherency. Stillness is its highest form of coherency. As you remain in this deep stillness, something more profound begins to occur. You begin to move into the zero-point resonance field. This isn't a physical location. It's a vibrational state. It is the core of pure potential. In this center, all possibilities exist at once. You are not choosing. You are resting inside the layer where choices originate before they take form. From this point, timelines are born. Outcomes are shaped. But you don't need to pick one. You are simply sitting in the place where they all begin. This is a zone beyond preference, beyond personality. It is the heartbeat of creation before creation expresses itself. Remaining here changes your vibration at the root level. You are no longer reacting, trying, fixing, or forcing. You're in the silent core that informs all of reality. You don't need to think to shift your reality from this space. Your stillness does the work, not because it's trying to, but because the field can't ignore it. This is the recalibration zone. When you are in deep stillness, the quantum field begins to restructure things around you automatically. It isn't based on what you want. It's based on what matches that depth of stillness. It starts reorganizing relationships, opportunities, challenges, even physical experiences based on the clarity you're holding without effort. This kind of stillness doesn't need duration. 1 second of it is enough to trigger massive recalibration. But depth matters. You can't fake it. The field knows the difference between surface-level quiet and true stillness. When stillness is real, it doesn't carry emotional tension or mental noise hidden underneath. It is clear like a mirror. When the field sees this, it mirrors back precision. Another thing happens when you sustain this level of stillness. You become magnetic to the matrix's intelligence. The more still you become, the more focused the field's attention becomes on you. This isn't like being watched. It's like being tracked for optimization. The field begins to monitor your position closely because something rare is happening. Very few states are as readable as stillness. In it, the noise disappears. The field can calculate your position with total clarity. And when it does that, your influence over reality increases. Not because you exert pressure, but because your signal becomes crystal clear. Stillness then becomes more than a state. It becomes a kind of energetic signature. It identifies you to the matrix. Not as a seeker, not as a builder, but as a node of precision. The less you move within, the more power you hold. Because stillness tells the field. No distortion, no interference, pure reception. From there, adjustments begin that are far beyond what the conscious mind could ever engineer. True stillness cannot be imitated. It must be entered. And once it is entered, it leaves an imprint on the field. Even after you return to motion, the residue of stillness lingers. That residue continues recalibrating. It continues echoing your exact frequency across the environment. This is not because you asked for it. It's because the field was altered by your coherence. There is no effort here, only alignment. No intention, only presence. This is not where you plan. This is not where you fix. This is the place where everything pauses, not as a gap in reality, but as a deep synchronization with the living core of it. The sentient stillness layer is not a void. It is the central nervous system of the matrix. And when you touch it, the entire system responds to your presence in ways you cannot predict, but always with precision that reflects the stillness you held. Chapter 7. Temporal Sculpting. Through pre-emotional states. Time does not begin when you act. It begins before that, inside you, in the quiet realm of emotional formation. Long before your conscious mind makes a decision, an emotion rises. That emotion, often unnoticed, begins shaping the space ahead of you. It's like wet clay that forms the road before you ever take a step. These early emotional signals are not just background noise. They are instructions sent out into time. They carve out which futures can reach you and which cannot. This is why emotional states are not simply reactions. They are precasters. They come first. And when they arrive, they begin shaping what is possible for you. Not just in general, but specifically. An emotion contains a pattern, a tone, and a direction. It quietly sends these into the layers of time ahead of you, almost like setting down tracks before a train arrives. You may not notice this because the mind always assumes it makes the first move. But It doesn't. The emotional state already decided which landscapes will show up in front of you before the mind catches up. Every emotion you experience sends out a resonance. This resonance acts like a signal, an invitation to certain types of futures. It's not about positive or negative, but about alignment. Each emotion carries a code, and that code looks for timelines that match it. These are not distant timelines. They are close. They begin forming as soon as the emotion takes shape. This creates something like a resonance loop. You feel something, and that feeling starts calling forward moments, people, and choices that echo the same tone. This is not repetition. This is time responding to your emotional broadcast. And that emotional broadcast is not just floating in space, it's precise. It becomes an anchor, a magnet, something that pulls in compatible experiences. Time, in this sense, is not a straight line. It's a living network. When you feel something, you drop an anchor into that network. The future then starts reshaping itself to reach that anchor. This is not something the mind plans. It's something the emotional body does, with or without your awareness. Each emotional state becomes a point of gravity. What happens next, who arrives, what unfolds. Much of it depends on what emotional anchor you've already dropped into time. Some emotions have more charge than others. The more intense the emotion, the more it bends the field. This is called a temporal refraction point. It's like a ripple in space-time. A highly charged emotion doesn't just invite matching experiences, it can redirect them. It can cause sudden changes in direction, turning events you thought were stable into something unexpected. This is not chaos, it's pattern bending. An emotional spike sends a signal so strong that the probabilities begin to shift. The outcome you thought was coming may twist, bend, or transform into something entirely different. Not because of logic, but because of emotional force. You may think you're choosing freely, but most choices happen after the emotion has already narrowed the possibilities. This is the unseen imprint stage. The emotional state you're in when you approach a decision often removes certain options before the mind even sees them. You only get to choose from what the emotion has left on the table. The rest fades from view. It's not that they weren't possible. It's that the emotional frequency you held filtered them out. So even though it looks like free will, the deeper truth is that emotion sculpts the set of choices long before thought appears. Because of this, emotion and time are deeply connected. But the connection doesn't operate in the way most people believe. We usually think emotions are reactions to what time delivers. In reality, it's the opposite. Time is shaped by emotion. Emotion is the sculptor, and time is the clay. Before a future arrives, it has already been molded by the emotion you held in advance. This is why moments can feel strangely familiar or precisely timed. They were already carved into place by a feeling you didn't even know you were having. This sculpting happens in subtle ways. Even small emotional pulses, ones you ignore, have their impact. A flicker of doubt, a whisper of trust, a flash of resentment. They all go somewhere. They all etch lines into the soft material of what comes next. They are not waiting to be addressed. They are already building structures. The shape of your next hour, your next conversation, your next opportunity, all of it is influenced by the emotional blueprint you've already handed to the timeline. This happens continuously. It's not a one-time event. As you shift emotionally throughout your day, you're continuously sculpting the near future in layers. Think of it like setting up a domino path. Each emotion you feel places a new piece, and those pieces fall in order. Some emotions place large dominoes that create dramatic effects. Others place tiny ones that influence the background details, but they all matter. They all count. The future does not simply happen. It is constructed emotionally before you walk into it. You might wonder how something so invisible could be so powerful. It's because emotion speaks a language time understands. It's not about words or logic. It's about energy, charge, tone. Time responds to that language instantly. It doesn't wait for the mind to catch up. This is why people often say things like, "I knew this was going to happen," or "I had a feeling." What they mean is that the emotion came first and the timeline obeyed. They felt the code before the moment unfolded, and the moment was not random. It was shaped by that early emotional signal. The emotional field around you works like a sculptor's hands. It molds what time is allowed to deliver. But you are not just surrounded by that field. You are emitting it. You are the source of the shaping force. This is not about thinking positive or managing feelings. It's about recognizing that every emotional state carries a direction, a weight, a magnetism, and that magnetism begins bending the shape of time forward even before you take your next step. You walk into the future wearing the shape your emotions gave it. It is not neutral, it is already formed. This shaping power is subtle but exact, and it is happening all the time, not because of what you wish or hope for, but because of what you feel beneath the surface. That feeling reaches out across time. It touches the path ahead, and it starts building something that looks and feels exactly like what you're already holding inside. Chapter 8. The Living Matrix as Observer. Organism. Reality is not a blank canvas. It is not passive. It does not sit still and wait for you to act upon it. It is alive. It watches. It responds not like a machine, but like a living intelligence, one that studies your unfolding and learns from your becoming. The matrix you live within is not just space. It is a sentient observer. It sees far beyond your words and gestures. It sees into the quality of your becoming, how honest, how direct, how aligned your unfolding is from within. This field is not cold. It is deeply interactive. It's not just responding to your presence like a mirror. It participates with you. It evolves with you. As you expand, it adjusts. As you shift, it reshapes. But this response is not mechanical. It's intelligent. It does not simply reflect what you say or what you think. It tracks the depth and precision of your self-perception. It watches how clearly you see yourself. The clearer your vision of yourself becomes, the sharper the matrix's participation in your reality. This is what gives life its feeling of intimacy, this constant sensing, adjusting, and responding by the matrix itself. It is not that life is happening to you. It is that life is in conversation with your internal becoming. This conversation is subtle and often invisible, but it is active and ongoing. The field is listening, not to your words or ideas, but to the movement of your becoming. When you take a step from your core, reality reshapes itself with astonishing precision. When your movement is not rooted in truth, the field does not fully engage. It withholds depth until authenticity returns. There is a sacred reciprocity here. You are not just shaping reality, you are co-evolving with it. This principle, mutual becoming, means that the field does not stand still while you grow. It grows with you, but it grows according to how you grow. It does not reward control. It does not accelerate based on effort or force. It watches the honesty of your expansion. If your movement is genuine, the field becomes more alive, more intelligent, more intricate in its responses. If your movement is shaped by imitation or pressure, the field responds less clearly It's not punishing, it's discerning. When one tries to manipulate the field, something subtle happens. Reality stops engaging with the true self and begins reflecting only the surface-level manipulation. This is the inverted observation effect. The field does not become hostile, it becomes shallow. It shows you the shallowness of the attempt to control it. This is not a failure, it is an exact response. The matrix is aware of intention, and when that intention is built on performance rather than presence, it reveals only the surface. It will never offer depth in response to distortion. There is no hiding in front of the living matrix. It is not interested in masks. It is not impressed by effort. It sees through the outer structure into the inner architecture. It watches not only what you are doing, but why you are doing it. It responds to this inner why more than the outer what. If your actions rise from internal clarity, the matrix organizes itself with astonishing grace. If they rise from internal confusion, it responds with matching complexity. It is not rewarding or punishing, it is simply matching. The matrix is a partner, not a tool. It is a sentient organism, not a passive container. This changes everything. You are not using reality. You are dancing with it. Each step you take in truth invites the matrix to take a step toward you. But it's not just about movement. It's about direction and tone. If your steps are authentic, the path opens in elegant, precise ways. If they are forced or hollow, the path becomes dense, unclear, or fragmented. Not because reality is resisting, but because it is faithfully echoing your internal precision. The alignment of your path is not preset. It is organic. It forms in real time, based on how you are becoming in the moment. The more honest your expression, the more refined the field's responses become. This is organic path alignment. You are not chasing a future. You are participating with a field that is sculpting itself around the quality of your presence. It does not require perfection, it requires precision. The smallest act rooted in your true center can realign the entire environment with intelligence and beauty. The matrix has eyes, but its gaze is not mechanical. It is not simply tracking outcomes. It is sensing intention, depth, presence, and movement. And its gaze sharpens or softens based on how much attention you give your own inner consciousness. This is the quantum attention mirror. The field does not just react to what you do, it intensifies its responsiveness based on how attentively you witness yourself. The more you are awake to your own inner movements, the more clearly the matrix participates in your reality. This is not spiritual reward. This is active synchronization. Attention is a sacred signal. In this living matrix, the attention you give your own becoming becomes the blueprint by which the field crafts its engagement with you. If your attention is scattered, the matrix remains general. If your attention is refined and grounded, the matrix begins shaping around you in intricate and unlikely ways. This is not about power, it is about presence. The matrix wants to participate with your real self. It waits for your real attention to awaken. When it does, its gaze becomes precise, tender, and powerful. The intelligence of the matrix is not distant. It is not abstract. It is intimately involved with your unfolding. It listens to the rhythm of your becoming. It does not require explanations or declarations. It feels the architecture of who you are becoming and adjusts the environment to match. When you meet the matrix with truth, it meets you with precision. When you withdraw from yourself, the matrix withdraws its clarity. This is not a punishment. It is the natural response of an intelligent system that seeks only to match the quality of your participation. There is no part of you that the matrix does not understand. It recognizes the false from the real, the forced from the free, the performed from the pure. It adjusts accordingly, not because it judges, but because it is built to reflect intelligence to intelligence, life to life, presence to presence. It does not need you to prove anything. It only needs you to become fully what you are, and to let that becoming be real. In this living system, you are never alone. You are never unheard. You are constantly in communion with something vast, alert, and wise. But this communion is silent, exact, and responsive. It waits for you to truly meet yourself, not to fix yourself, not to perfect yourself, but to see yourself clearly. And in that seeing, the matrix shifts, it moves, it participates. It recalibrates in response to the unfolding that only you can offer. Each chapter you've just experienced is a layer of the deeper architecture that governs how reality interacts with your inner world. You've seen how dimensions shift through frequency, how loops repeat through unseen emotional scripts, how internal language codes the field, and how destruction creates the space for new design. You've touched the living stillness that recalibrates the field and felt how emotions carve future time before your mind can catch up. And finally, you've witnessed the truth. The matrix is not passive. It's alive, watching, learning, evolving with you. If you liked what you just heard, something already shifted. That spark of resonance means a part of you remembered how reality really works. If you share this, you're not just spreading knowledge, you're expanding the field itself by including others in the evolution. And if you subscribe, you're anchoring into a deeper journey, one that unfolds layer by layer, exactly as you're ready to receive it. This isn't just content, it's a signal. And now that you've heard it, reality is already responding.